So we've actually found out
How
what
about
Tarantino's
Riverside
next
FM?
project is, and surprisingly, it's not a movie. He's going to be doing a stage play, which was kind of surprising to me. I was unaware that he was even making a play. I guess this is something that he had been like in the works with for a while now, but he talked about in his podcast recently that he's going to be working on a stage play that should take him about 2 years to really get done with. So at least for next like 3 to 4 years, maybe even 5 years, we're probably not going to get another Tarantino film. We were going to get The Critic, which was going to be his Tim film, but then he talked about that he felt like it was too close to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it was just not really something he really wanted to do once he really thought about it, so he scrapped it. We are getting, well, I mean, speaking of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, David Fincher is making the Cliff Booth spinoff of Brad Pitt, which is going to be released on Netflix, I think, next year. So that's going forward. But as far as Tarantino making his Tim film, it seems like even he doesn't know what his Tim film is. But, I wonder with Tarantino if there's like a degree of just kind of like fear of his Tim film. Because, like, one thing about Tarantino that he's talked about for a while, and a big part of why he's actually want to do just 10 films is like he doesn't want to be one of those directors that ruins his legacy, that just doesn't know when to call it a day. Like, he made good films, but then like the end of his career was just not good. And that's something that Tarantino's talked about like how their directors that he's really admired, their careers went on for a long time, and at the end of their work, their end of their careers, the later work wasn't as good as their original work, and that kind of damaged or kind of tainted their reputation. And Tarantino, I think he has that to a really severe degree. Like, I feel like a part of why he's been kind of not too eager to like make a Tim Fills. I feel like he really wants to make this as perfect as possible. Because especially if this is going to be his last film, I mean, I feel like Tarantino of all people like want that to be his magnum opus. Like that would be the best work he ever did. And so I feel like he's probably going to work on this for years and years. Like I think realistically, we probably won't get his Tim film for a while. I mean, there's also the possibility that he might not make another film. I mean, if he's going to be doing this stage play for 2 years, and he also talked about how he wanted to spend more time with his kid too, who's like about 2.5 years old now. So he's a father now, so he wants to be more at home with his kid. Understandable. So like I even wonder like I think there's a possibility that we might not get a Tim Tarantino film. I mean, especially when you consider the fact that he's actually like given the script for the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel or spinoff to David Fincher to direct. Like it seems like he's kind of more open to like other people and other directors and other creatives like taking his source material and like actually adapting it or doing something with it that he doesn't want to or just doesn't want to put the energy into doing it. And so I wonder if there's like actually just kind of the potential of like not ever getting a Tim film. And I mean, honestly, I don't think that'd be the worst thing. It's not like Tarantino's made a bad film. Like, I think that like really Tarantino's like one of the few directors currently alive. Like, I don't know if you'd say all time, but I don't think you can really look at his filmography and like really point to a bad film. I mean, there are people that don't like some films, better than others, or like films, better than others, vice versa. But I don't think he's really made a bad film. So if he ends on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, to me personally, I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think it's one of his best films. I don't think it's his best yet, but I think it ranks in his, at least for me. I think it's in his top five best films. I wouldn't put it up there in the top three. I would say that for me, The Hateful Eight's up there. Inglourious Bastards, I kind of like this more than that, but I put that up there. Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown. I mean, he has so many just iconic, really good fucking movies. It's kind of hard to like make a definitive list of like what's his best movie or like what's his best feature out of them all. And so, like for me, if he never makes another film, I don't think that'd be a bad thing. And I mean, honestly, since Tarantino's so concerned about having a cemented good like legacy, I think he's as good as you could get. Like, I don't think you could get as closer to a perfect legacy of films than Tarantino, especially someone who has been in Hollywood for 30 plus years, who's written and directed all of his movies. That's something that's also kind of unique of like being someone who's also wrote and directed, and I think he's also produced some of his films too. So like that's a very interesting combination. There's very few directors you can find that really have that combination. So I think really when it comes to like a Tim film, I don't know. Maybe there's the possibility that, like, if he's kind of made his interest into other things, like he wrote the book of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which came out a few years ago. Like he's into making novels, and he's talked about how he's actually wanted to start making like novels and wanted to start writing a lot more because the way he writes his screenplays, he's talked about this, how he writes them like novels, like he puts as much detail and depth into them like you would into a novel. And you like hear him talk about writing, and I mean he loves the writing process of making a screenplay. So and you look at how he's like now doing this stage play, which is going to take 2 years. According to him, it's going to take 2 years. Now he says if it like flops, it might be a little bit less, but at least for the next year or so, he's going to be locked into the stage play. So it seems like he's kind of like steered his interest away from being focused on just purely making films and doing movies to like writing to doing, podcasting, which he's done that, forever. But like it seems like he's kind of focused more on that. He's doing the stage play, and that's something he's actually talked about. I remember when The Hateful Eight came out, he did an interview where he talked about how he wanted to make that into like a international stage play, and he was like really wanting to do that at some point, and just I don't think it ever really came through. So this is something that he's actually wanted to do for a while. This isn't something that's random. Like I know he's talked about for a long time about actually adapting different types of his movies into stage plays. So I can see why he'd want to do this. But kind of looking, past, assuming he makes a Tim film, like assuming either he just retires from filmmaking with the nine or he makes a Tim one. What exactly will Tarantino's like post directing career look like? Because there's no way he's going to stop being involved with films. Like I do not believe that he is just going to stop being involved or doing anything with films. I mean, that's like saying that like fucking John Cena when he retires from wrestling, he's never coming back. He will be back. Like Tarantino is going to be around. He cannot help himself. He is addicted. It is like his fucking essence is cinema. Like he's as close to a sentient cinematic encyclopedia fucking Wikipedia source that you can possibly get. So he's going to be around. He's going to be doing something. And the question is like, what exactly will Tarantino be doing? Because I've wondered this, and I think with Tarantino, there's a few different routes that his post directing career could go, and I think we're kind of seeing it right now. Like I think the one route that's pretty likely is I could see him just becoming a purely like producer slash script writer, and he just either like gives his scripts to studios or he like chooses directors and writers and people he wants to adapt his work, and he just pretty much like has his work be adapted in different ways that other people want to like adapt it. I could see that being a way because the fact that that he was open and like was wanting David Fincher to adapt the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel. It shows that he does have an openness to like allowing other directors to like take his work and like actually do what they want to with it. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a Tarantino script, and he's going to probably want to have some degree of input or at least want to be involved to some degree. Because I mean, even on the Cliff Booth spinoff, he's a producer, and he's talked about how he'll be around for them to like ask questions and like get advice or like if they have anything they want to talk about or if he wants to talk about something. So he'll still be kind of involved, just not hands on. It'll just be more of a far pretty much. So I could definitely see him just having a post career of just being a purely producer screenwriter and just making scripts and selling them to studios or like having partnerships. I could even see him actually making his own kind of company where he just like makes his like pretty much like his own creative company where he just writes scripts and then has like all these up and coming directors, like indie directors that are able to adapt his work and like are able to like make their own stories and like adapt to their own films. Because I could see Tarantino doing that. I mean, especially when you see where he came from, working at the video store, having to scrape by to make his films and like especially when you look at when Tarantino started making films, it was 100 times harder back in the day to start making your own film opposed to like today you can pretty much make your own film and your own short film or even a feature film by yourself in like a few days to a few months and it looks like a fucking cinematic production from Hollywood. And so I could definitely see Tarantino being interested in like trying to like help the new generation of filmmakers be able to like actually get their films made and like actually become like big, names and big, big stars in Hollywood. So I could see that being an option. Another thing I could see him doing, and he's already kind of done this already, like for about 15, 16 years. And I mean, he has his podcast right now too. I could see him just becoming like a normal, like having a weekly or bi-weekly or some like frequent podcast where he just talks about movies, not even just like current movies. Like he just like talks about whatever movies he wants to. Like I could see him even having like film showings where he like, because he has his own movie theater. I think it's in California. I think he bought. I think it's one like a historic cinema that he bought, but he has his own theater. So I could see him doing like screenings. I could see him. I could even see at some point. Sounds kind of crazy, but I could see him doing like some streaming of films and like talking about them, reacting to them. I think that'd be kind of cool. I would love to see a weekly Tarantino podcast where he just talks about current films that have come out, old films, actors he likes, just different aspects of Hollywood, just, cinematic history or cinema history. Talking about the golden age of Hollywood, talking about the early, era of Hollywood. I would love to see that. And I will say, one thing I would love to see Tarantino react to and talk about, and I don't know if he's ever seen a single film of this director. I want to say he probably has just because of how big of a cinephile he is, but he's never, as far as I can tell, he's never talked about this person. He's never talked about a single film he's made, which I can see. I can see why. But I would pay so much money to have Tarantino watch the entire filmography of Tyler Perry and give a thorough review of every single Tyler Perry film. I would fucking love that. I just think that would be the best content ever to just have Tarantino on a fucking 5 hour podcast just talking about every Tyler Perry film from Diary of a Mad Black Woman to the most recent Medea film. I would love that. So that's something I'd be personally into. Like, I would love to see Tarantino just like have a weekly podcast, and you could even have like guests on there like Christopher Nolan or just Paul Thomas Anderson or Wes Anderson or Ryan Coogler. Like he has like a different director on each week. He has a different actor on each week, or he has like a semi-regular co-host, which they could be anyone, friend or whoever he wants to. I think there's a lot you could do with that. Like, there's a lot you could do with a Tarantino-centered podcast because he already does that. And he's already kind of had a semi-show throughout the years of like talking about movies. And one of my favorite reviews he did was about Todd Phillips' Joker, not the second one, not the sequel, but the original. Like, yeah, I love listening to Tarantino's reviews. So, like, I think that there's definitely an audience out there that would love to just listen to like a 2 to 3 hour podcast of Tarantino. So I think that's one route he might go, where he just becomes like a purely like podcaster, and he just doesn't really like isn't involved directly with films. But I think also with Tarantino, I don't know, like because I touched on like how he could like make his own studio or his own like company. I think that that's something I would see him doing at some point. Like, because I mean, he is kind of older now. Like Tarantino's like in his 60s, and by the time he's done with like filmmaking, he'll probably be like mid 60s, early 70s. So he'll not be a young guy. He'll definitely be more definitely towards the end of any type of career than towards the beginning of it. So I could see him getting to the point where he's like, you know what, I'm older. I've had, a 30 plus year career. I've cemented my legacy in Hollywood. I'm just going to make my own company and just like use this as a vessel, a vehicle to like allow up and coming creatives, and I just like oversee the company and like that's it, kind of like a more better version of Miramax essentially. Like I could see him doing something like that, just strictly like that, and like not making his own films, like and then instead of like having like his scripts be adapted by like people in the company or like creative like different writers and directors. He just like allows them, he just like funds their projects. Because like I could see him doing something similar to like what Brad Pitt does, because Brad Pitt has his own company that has helped like several different indie films get made. And so I could totally see Tarantino doing that, where he just like has a company that like they all they do is just like help either like underfunded filmmakers or just like organizations that are like trying to help indie filmmakers like get their films made and their projects made. I could easily see that being done, like something he'd be interested in doing and getting done. And I could even see him being into like having a company that's just like entirely into like having scripts being purchased and like being able to be sold to different studios, like buying or acquiring very underrated, underutilized directors and up and coming directors, and not even directors, just like screenwriters, just like getting their work out there to be able to like be submitted to like the major companies out there. I can see him doing that. So I mean, yeah, like there's so many different things that I could see Tarantino doing. I really think that he might do a combination of all of those options. The company one, I don't know. I don't know. Tarantino, he doesn't really strike me as like someone who would want to be it. Like that would be something he'd be into doing, especially if he starts doing this in his like late 60s, early 70s. I have no idea if he'd even want to be doing that type of work of like, making a company, like having to sustain it and be responsible for it. That's a lot of fucking work. And I don't know if Tarantino, when he's pushing 70, plus he has a kid, he has a family, I don't know. He might not even be one to do that. But like, I think that I could see him definitely being just like a novelist. Like, that's another thing. Is like, I could see him, even if he doesn't want to do like screenwriting necessarily, I could see him doing like a combination of both where he does like screenwriting and just like being like a novelist. Like, he makes books that are just, fiction books, like pulp fiction novels, pretty much. I could see him doing something like that. I mean, especially if we're talking about like an older Tarantino, like, I could see him having, a point, to where he's like, I just want to, take it easy, do things I enjoy. And then that'd be something he would enjoy doing, writing. I could see him just loving writing novels, short stories, reviews. I could even see him doing like, online essays, like where he just like reviews work of other directors. Cause like he's talked about how he does like kind of like critiquing and like reviewing work of his peers, but he kind of like he kind of holds back for some of it because like he at the time was like still working with a lot of them, so he didn't want to like burn any bridges or kind of have any falling outs with any people in Hollywood. But if he's retired, I mean, he'll just have like a don't give a fuck mindset, because like at that point it's like I don't care who I burn a bridge with or who I fall out with. Like, I'm retired, I'm just doing this because I want to. So I could see him just being fucking unrelentless with his fucking reviews of certain films and critiques of certain filmmakers. And honestly, I'd be all for it. Like, I would love it. I will say it will be very unfortunate for cinema and just Hollywood in general when Tarantino retires, because I would say at least of the current generation. I don't even say not even just the current generation. I would say probably of all time. I mean, Tarantino is one of those just like anomalies that you rarely see. I mean, ever. I think like a Tarantino comes along just once in a very rare time. At any point in history. Like someone that just has such a deep passion and love for cinema that just like lives and breathes and embodies filmmaking, every aspect of it. It's something that's very rare. Like, I feel like if Hollywood had the mindset and the mentality of Tarantino, I'm not talking about making just like Tarantino films or just like making, all types of versions of Tarantino scripts. I'm talking about like just the mindset and the passion and that just pure love for cinema. If Hollywood as an entirety, like as an entity or as like this in general, I guess you could say, if it had that, like if it just had that passion, that love that Tarantino has for making original, new art, new films, Hollywood would be a far better place. If somehow Tarantino was in charge of Hollywood, it would be such a better fucking place right now. I mean, obviously, it still have problems, but it would be far better. But yeah, it will be unfortunate when Tarantino finally calls it a day, because Tarantino's era of filmmakers, I mean, they are kind of, I wouldn't say, I don't know, like I would say that they are winding down, but not really. I mean, you look at directors that are far older than Tarantino, like Ridley Scott, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola. There are plenty of directors that are far older. Some, I think, Ridley Scott. He's like fucking what, 80, 90 now. Fucking, I think one is he's like mid 80s, early 90s, something like that. I mean, he's fucking up there. and he's still making like 4 or 5 films a year. It's fucking insane how many films he can make. He just like can make in that short of time. Like even Martin Scorsese, like he's like making back to back major blockbusters. Even Francis Coppola, with Metropolis. That's a pretty impressive feat for someone of his age. And like I think that's also something else. Like I don't know, like I wonder if Tarantino at some point down the line, once he's retired, if he'll just get that itch, or like he doesn't just want to make like a novel, or just doesn't want to make a script, or he just doesn't want to like talk about it. Like he wants to personally make his film the way he wants to. Because Tarantino, he is open to giving his work to other people to adapt, but I feel like there is a possessiveness that Tarantino has about his work, that I could see him kind of being like, I don't want anyone else, no disrespect anyone else. I want to make this how I want to in my image, and I'm gonna do it myself, and I'm gonna do this one film, and then I'm gonna retire again. So I could see him if it's a really good idea, a really good story that he really wants to see be adapted. I could see him making an exception where he's like, you know what, this one film, I'm gonna make this, and then I'm gonna retire. And then obviously that just kind of leaves the fucking gate open where it's like, okay, one more. I could see there being multiple one mores, and that's it. But then again, like I don't know, like because as much as I think that, like again, like Tarantino, he is going to be like in his early 70s in a few years, especially if he's going to be doing this play and all that. And then like assuming he's like takes a few more years to make his like 10th film, I mean he will be like mid 70s. I mean, obviously, we've seen other directors that like are still going in their mid 70s, 80s, early 90s. So it's not like there isn't an abundance of directors that are older that are still going strong. But I don't know if Tarantino would want to be going that strong at that age. But I feel like he would. Like I think it would have to be just like Tarantino's just like in such poor health, or just like age has just fucking not been kind to him, to where like he just physically can't actually do the role of a director anymore. Like I feel like he would just have to be such like straining circumstances to where he could not be a director again for him not to do it, no matter how old he is. Like I could see Tarantino at fucking like damn near 81 being like, you know what? I've been retired for 30 years. I'm gonna fucking go back and do it again. Like one more time, see if I got it, and then I'm gonna do it. I mean, especially with how much more technology has come out, where it's made filmmaking a lot more easier than it used to be. Even 15, 20 years ago. So it wouldn't even be as straining on them as it would be like 30, 20, or even now to make another film. So I could see that happening. I mean, I don't know. We're just gonna have to just wait and see what happens after the play, and then see what happens with David Fincher's adaptation of the Cliff Booth story. I mean, I am interested. I really am interested to see how that turns out, because I really thought that was an April Fool's joke. Like I remember when I saw the article, it came out on April 1st, so I thought, oh, this is a fucking joke. Like David Fincher is making a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spinoff. Yeah, that's happening. And then like half a month came, like it was halfway into April where it really dawned on me. I was like, oh shit, this is actually real. Like this is actually happening. Like it took like half a month for me to like realize that like this was happening. And I was like, you know what? I'm all for it. So like I'm excited to see like what David Fincher, like how he adapts a Tarantino film, because like I feel like David Fincher and Tarantino, they do have very distinctly different styles, and I don't know how a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's kind of sequel or spinoff to the film is going to go. I wonder if Leonardo DiCaprio will show up in it. I don't know if he will. I would probably lean into not, just because of a price standpoint. Like I feel like it'd probably cost like fucking $19 million just to have him show up for 5 minutes and just say some random lines and leave. So just from like a fucking financial standpoint, it might just be a straight Brad Pitt, because I'm sure he's getting paid a fucking ton of money just to get him there. So to get Leo and Brad Pitt just for a spinoff, that might not happen, but it'd be cool if it did. Yeah, I'll definitely be curious and interested in seeing what happens with the with this Cliff Booth spinoff. But with that said, I think I'm gonna call it a day here, and I will see you good people later.